Single man allows seamstress to play with his mustache. October 1885.
I want you to mention all the places where you have been alone with Mr. Downs in Boston.
Do you mean in a building or a room?
I mean, anywhere alone with him.
I have been with him in my room alone and in the study alone, as you know.
What other places?
Never in any other place.
Of course, he has been in your house.
Yes.
You have been with him once on a trip to Worcester.
Yes.
Has he been in Worcester with you more than that once?
No, sir.
Did you ever meet him anywhere else out of Boston?
No, sir.
Did you ever go to Connecticut with him?
I never was in Connecticut in my life.
At the conclusion of her testimony, Mrs. Tabor stepped from the stand and took her seat by the side of Mr. Downs. Anna McKinnon, a domestic in the house of Professor Luther S. Townsend, where Mrs. Lincoln lived as a seamstress, testified to Mr. Tabor's calls there. She said,
I have not seen Mr. Tabor and Mrs. Lincoln in any other room than the sitting room, but I have heard him in Mrs. Lincoln's bedroom on 2 occasions. I often left the house when Mr. Tabor and Mrs. Lincoln were alone there. I have often seen Mr. Tabor kiss Mrs. Lincoln and seen them with their arms around each other. I have seen them on the lounge together. He was lying down and she was sitting in front of him with her arms around him. I don't remember seeing her play with his mustache. They often went out together. The first time I heard Mr. Tabor in Mrs. Lincoln's room, she told me she took him there to show him 2 new bonnets and a hat. The other time, she did not say why she took him there. I did not know Mr. Tabor was married until this scandal came on.
Professor Townsend then testified that Mr. Tabor came to his house to visit Mrs. Lincoln. His first conversation was when he was invited to take tea there one evening. He judged from what they had for supper that it was Saturday night.
Beans.
Yes,
Mr. Tabor generally called on Sunday. When he ascertained that Tabor was married, he took him to task for coming there as a single man. And Tabor replied that he didn't think it was necessary to tell them that he was married. The witness added that the relations between Mr. Tabor and Mrs. Lincoln were, so far as he knew, those which were considered proper when a young man is waiting on a young woman. He knew of Dr. Tabor and Mrs. Lincoln going to ride once, when they were gone about 3 hours. Maud, the little daughter of Professor Townsend, testified to having seen Mr. Tabor at her father's house in the sitting room and the sewing room lying on the sofa with Mrs. Lincoln's arms around him. She had also seen Mrs. Lincoln play with Mr. Tabor's mustache and had often seen them with their arms around each other. Her little sister was generally in the room, and she went in and out. Mr. Dickinson's cross-examination of this witness was only this.
I have nothing to ask. Go right straight home. I wouldn't be guilty of cross-examining such a little girl as you.
G.W. Davis, a colored man with a long jet beard which he stroked thoughtfully when giving his testimony. He said he went to the pastor's study today and made an experiment at the transom over the door with a chair, a cane, a stick, and a mirror. He said,
The nearest view I could get of the inside was the top of the bookcase. I tried it in every way, but I could not see the lounge or anything near it.
It was in this way that Tabor testified he had seen Pastor Downs and Mrs. Tabor in compromising situation. Mr. Downs was first called, and was questioned as to the Dern Street boarding house affair, when the door of Mrs. Tabor's room was burst open, and Mr. Downs and herself were found therein. Mr. Downs testified in substance.
I called at about 4 o'clock on the afternoon of August 17th last, and saw Mrs. Tabor in her room. It was on the 2nd floor at the head of the stairs, a small hole room about 7 feet by 10 or 11. I called again at about 8 o'clock in the evening. I went upstairs and Mrs. Tabor opened the door of her room to me. I had walked very quickly and was warm. We conversed about her proposed trip, she said.
You are very warm. Throw off your coat.
I threw it on a chair. Mrs. Tabor had a bag of apples and offered me one, taking one herself. There is a narrow passage between the wardrobe and the bed, and I have been walking up and down this. She came over to the bureau and sat down on the edge of the bed beside me. The room had become very warm, and I suggested she had better turn the gas down. There was a cloth over the keyhole of the door, hanging on the key. I do not remember having removed my shoes. My vest was on but was unbuttoned. I always wear it so in warm weather. I was sitting on the edge of the bed furthest from the door, and Mrs. Tabor beside me nearest the door. The gas was partly turned down, and I had been there about 3/4 of an hour when there came a crash. Mrs. Tabor jumped up with a scream, and I got up. She had on a sack and a white outside skirt. I should call it a dress, and her shoes were on. 3 men rushed into the room, and I was of course very much confused, not understanding what it meant. Mrs. Tabor, I think, turned up the gas. One of the men, the Detective Jarvis, made some remarks not complimentary to me. I exchanged no words with him. Mr. Tabor went for an officer, and Mr. Smith, who was standing guard at the door, talked to Mrs. Tabor and expressed surprise at her conduct. She asked him if he knew he was in her room, and that seemed to silence him. I reached for my coat, but the detective prevented me from putting it on. Mr. Tabor returned with 2 officers, who ordered us to come out, which we did, and under their escort were marched to the police station. On the way, Mrs. Tabor, who was excited, entered into some conversation with the officers, and I tried to check her, but they stopped me. At the station house, the lieutenant, who appeared to be in very good humor, laid out 2 keys for cells. I said I wanted to send a message first to my home and then to one of the deacons. He said he had no messenger, but finally offered to send an officer. We were then locked up. I heard no remark from Mrs. Tabor to her husband while we were in the station. Mr. Tabor stood by with a complacent smile as I was taken to the cell. Later in the evening, we were bailed out.
Mr. Downs then told of previous calls upon Mrs. Tabor and of accompanying her, on one occasion to Worcester, in answer to a telegram from her sister. There he got certain instructions from her mother. Mrs. Tabor went to Dern Street July 1st, and he thought he called upon her about twice a week. One time he noticed a cloth over the keyhole and asked her what it was there for. She said she had seen someone looking through it. He testified that Mrs. Tabor also came at times to his study. He knew that their intimacy was subject of comment in the church. He also knew that it was not the cause of the alienation of her husband. In September 1893, he called upon her and said certain people were making trouble by writing letters to Mr. Tabor about himself. Mr. Tabor at length began vindictive toward her, threatening to end her, and charging the witness with all sorts of irregularities. In March 1839, Mr. Tabor made a profession of religion, and Mr. Downs baptized him. Then he confessed, when Mrs. Tabor was present, that he had been wrong in all his grievances.
I have from 5 to 30 callers a day at my study. The cause of the trouble, as I'll analyze it, was as follows. I'll always feel that Mr. Tabor had animosity against me, because I tried to give him preferment. He associated with people the church not very friendly to me, and gradually we drifted apart. He told people that he was going to make a smash-up in the church. On August 17th, Mrs. Doherty called and began to weep. At her request, I went to see Mrs. Tabor that afternoon with approval of my wife. I informed Mrs. Tabor that Miss Doherty made a proposition to me to the effect that the Spirit of the Lord had wrought a great change in her heart in relation to her animosity to Mrs. Tabor, and that she was now her friend. Mrs. Doherty wanted Mr. Downs to inform Mrs. Tabor this. Kai had addressed her to see Mrs. Downs about what to do. My wife thought I had better return and find out what decision Mrs. Tabor had. Arrived at when I called that night, Mrs. Tabor said that Mrs. Downs was very suspicious of Mrs. Doherty's change up front. Mrs. Tabor also stated that she had found that Mrs. Doherty was a mistake. That is what we were talking about when the store was broken down.
H. Tarbell, sexton of Bowdoin Square Church, next testified as to Mrs. Tabor's frequent visits to Mr. Downs's study. He said,
"She had a peculiar way of ringing the bell, and it seemed to me that Mr. Downs responded to the call quicker than usual."
Detective James Jarvis, the private who worked up the case for Mr. Tabor, was next called, and testified that he went to board at 7 Dern Street on August 3rd. He saw Mrs. Tabor and Mr. Downs at about 8 o'clock go upstairs. He met Mr. Tabor and Mr. Smith at the Revere House on the evening of August 15th, and the three went to number 7 Dern Street and entered Jervis's room there. They waited until they saw Mr. Downs go upstairs and heard the door of Mrs. Tabor's room close and lock. Then they went to the door and were unable to look in because of a cloth over the keyhole. But through a crack over the door, the witness saw that the gas was turned down. The following Monday evening, the three men again went into witness's room and took off their boots. Witness went to Mrs. Tabor's door and again found the keyhole covered, but could hear voices and through a crack saw that the gas was burning brightly. At 8:40, witness went up again and was followed by Mr. Tabor and Mr. Smith. The light had been turned out in the room. Witness had a dumbbell in his hand, with which he broke open the door, and the three men entered the room. Mr. Tabor lighted a piece of paper, and the couple were seen on the bed. The court here adjourned for the day.